Welcome along, my aspiring allies, and thank you for joining me on this most recent episode of the Speaking of Inclusion podcast. Now, today I was joined by Gary Parsons, leadership, mental health advocate, and inspirational speaker. Now, we had a really fascinating conversation all about the way in which we need to be taking care of our own mental health and well-being when it comes to the leadership positions we hold in our organizations, so that we can show up for our employees. Now, Gary's take on this is a really interesting one because he's coming at it from his own lived experience. So he knows what it is like to run a successful seven-figure business, and he knows what it's like, the risks and the challenges that can bring that lead to burnout and to really poor mental health outcomes. So he works with leaders and teams all around this information, and he joined us to share with us his model, his selfish model, or self as it starts with ish, the bolt on, which you will learn about. And he talks all around the stigma that is surrounding mental health. And please keep listening to the end, because he also talks about a really unique project that he is also launching, which is around facial difference. And he is part of a fantastic collaboration with Face Equality International. And it is really talking about some of the experience he's had in his life when it comes to the Bell's palsy that he experienced when he was 18. So that is absolutely worth a listen. So please do hang on to the end for it. The whole conversation is really, really very good. And that for me is also something I didn't want to let the opportunity pass without asking him about. So without further ado, you know the drill. Please sit back, relax, get comfortable in whichever way works best for you, and enjoy the Speaking of Inclusion podcast with Gary Parsons. Because in thinking then about actually that comparison thing that we do, don't we, like when it comes to how we feel about it, we're always looking at who's doing what and where are they doing it and how do I compare. And knowing the work that you do with leaders and well-being and all of that kind of stuff, is that a common thing that you come across?
It is. And I've just had a conversation on Wednesday this week about the hustle culture. And I really feel
Oh,
like I want to go out there and start shouting about it. This, particularly those toxic alpha male um, guys that are putting posts out saying, if you don't get up at 5 a.m. in the morning, then you've already failed. And I'm going, oh
yeah.
God, I don't think I'm even conscious at 5 a.m. in the morning, and I struggle at 8. I'm not a morning person whatsoever.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. There's some real toxic, negative, like productivity culture out there around
Mm.
that, about the fact that you've got to overwork. And if you're not burning out, then you're not in it for the long term. And some like
Yeah.
really awful, really painful messaging out there. And I'll share it with you now. It's because it's going to be out fairly soon. I'm looking at a campaign that it probably appeals to men, those, because I feel like that's where that shame is, that they're trying to create some shame where there really isn't any, and there really shouldn't be
Mm.
any. Um, and I'm putting something out there which is quite bold and quite crazy. And um, if this is the bit that you definitely choose to include, then I won't say it. But it starts with an
Oh, it
F.
will go in. This will go in. This is definitely going in. So don't say anything that you don't want sharing far and wide.
So basically, it's F the hustle. But I'll let you fill the other three letters in there
Oh,
as well.
in that case, we do swears on
We
this
can
show,
can we
Gary.
say
Have you not
fuck?
listened to it?
Like,
If
yeah,
you've
there's
not
some.
heard my show, we do swears. If you want to do swears, we do swears.
That's
Um,
fine. Yeah,
so
you're all about
Gary's on for fuck the hustle.
fuck the hustle, and it
I
is.
thought that
It's
was it. It wasn't like fruit the hustle that you were talking about.
no, and it wasn't like find the hustle.
No.
Um, like,
Yeah, find
but
your
yeah,
hustle. No, the opposite of that.
it's done in a way that and the work that I do, and we'll probably get into it, like the advocacy work that I do around leadership and mental health of
Yeah.
leaders. Sorry, mental health and well-being of leaders. I should get that right. And that leaders in disguise, and the work that I do with that, I feel like there needs to be a really strong campaign for some of the work that I'm going to be doing this year with that brand and that organization, that exciting stages that I'm at with it. And I really feel like that toxic productivity, it's not,
Mm.
productivity is not even the right word here, just like somebody telling you to get up at 5 a.m in the morning. I started off saying, we just should be saying no to those people. And then I said to the person I was having a chat with the other day, oh, we should just be telling them where to go. And he was like, basically, Gary, you just need to tell them to fuck off. And I was like, yeah. So fuck the hustle comes from that
Yeah.
that big bold language to just be like, do you know what? And I've had this conversation with you already. That people I work with and the people I see do incredibly well aren't the ones that are getting up at 5 a.m. and burning themselves out. That family is disowning them. That are going through divorce. That are sitting at the side of their parents' grave because they didn't spend enough time with them. They aren't the people that are, well, they might be successful in some ways, but they're not happy. And
Yeah.
I know what I'd rather be. I think I'm successful when I'm happy, and that's how I measure success.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think it's sustainable. I don't think we should be pushing people to start businesses, to grow businesses, to shout about businesses that are doing it, in my view, in the wrong way. So, absolutely fuck the hustle, because we absolutely need to be breaking that message, because it's not right.
Yeah.
And it's okay to make enough money to pay the bills. It's okay to pay, okay, it'd be great to not have less than the bills, but are your bills too high? I know
Yeah.
mine are. But actually, when we sit down and we sit with friends and they're like, oh, I and I say this from a very different place to many people, because I've had a business for 15 years. I've grown a 7-figure business. I've grown a let's get this really horrible, toxic Gary out for, no, I'm only joking. Let's get this moment out there. I have built over 15 years with a business partner, with colleagues, with teams, with family and friends around me. I've grown a 7-figure multi-award winning business that has worked not only here in the UK but across the world, in Singapore, in Hong Kong. Like, that was through an acquisition that I did, but it's a
Yeah.
worldwide
But you did
multinational
an
company.
acquisition. I mean, there it is,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
we only doubled in size overnight. It wasn't that big.
Yeah.
But like, so it comes from a place where I've seen it, and I've experienced the downsides of it. And did I need to do that? I tell you what, we made more the year that we did 1.2 million and the year that we did 800,000. I'll tell you which year we made more money. And
Mm,
and I use that phrase a lot, because you'd go, well, the 1.2, surely. No, absolutely not. We made a bigger profit the year that we did 800,000.
yeah. Yeah. And this is what we can often lose sight of. Like, what is our definition of success? What are our measures within that? And you've already called out like the emotional success rate for you is actually like, it's the way I feel about it. But then also like, yeah, turnover, it's a figure, it's not the figure.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are we doing this for? How do we want to do it? And I guess what I'm reading between the lines you're saying there is, you know, yes, you had less turnover, but if you were kind of focusing more on what you were doing and thinking about how you were doing it and how you felt when you were doing it, your profitability was higher because you were probably making better decisions, right? More engaged in what you're doing.
Yeah. And I'll not challenge you to this, but let's hypothetically challenge you to this,
Yeah.
because I don't do much exercise, and I really should do, and it's an area that I'm working on as part of my well-being. But if I said to you, Katie, let's run to the end of the road and run back again, if I'd been doing that all day long today, and the moment you come, I'm probably going to be a little bit exhausted. And I'm probably not going to be particularly successful at running to the end of the road and back. And you might beat me on the way there and on the way back. But what we do is we overwork, we work so many hours possible, we do everything everywhere. And you and I are guilty of this. So, everybody is. And I'm not saying what we look, I'm being real with it. I get that people experience this and we all do well. And I am probably the worst for it at times. I really am. I am. But we think some people just get caught up in it and they just keep going and going and going and going. I had a tradesman that came around to do some work in my house last year, and I'm going to say 22. Makes me feel really old, 42 nearly. He was 22, and I looked at him and I saw all of his intentions, and he was doing great. And when I was staying at my friend's house and my doorbell alarm went off to say somebody was at the front door, it was my tradesman. He was coming in at 10:30 at night to do some work because he was one. Well, when I questioned him about it, by the way, he had a key and was going in and out.
Yeah.
I questioned him on it, and he said, "I love it. It's about the money for me. It's what I want. I enjoy it, and I want the money." And I did everything I possibly could do to get him to listen to me from a place of experience of somebody that's burnt out, somebody that has, I've faced severe depression, anxiety, I've had CBT, I've gone through all of this. And I saw a 21, 22-year-old in front of me that was so naive, that was working at 10:30 at night
Yeah.
and felt it was okay. I felt this really strong sense of justice and duty to say, no, don't do that. Stop, please stop. And he listened to me. I don't know if it's fully gone in, but he did listen to me. And
Yeah.
it's crazy. Crazy.
Yeah.
People so naive with it.
Yeah, and like you say, that you are the example of that, and I think this is probably like a nice loop around to help people really understand like why you do what you do, because like you say, on paper, you had all the zeros, you had the money, the like cha-ching, money eyes emoji, like
Mm.
you were there, it was cool. And yet the price for that was your mental health and your well-being. When you talked about the symptoms there, like there was the burnout, the depression, like this is not insignificant states of being, right?
Yeah, 100%. And so many people attach mental health and well-being to an event or sad things, bad things, sad and bad. Maybe I'll use that in a workshop. Sad and
Yeah.
bad things, but they don't attach it to success and happy things. And or what we might see as success and we might see as happy things. And certainly the vanity metrics the alarms go off. You're like,
Yeah.
woo. And yeah, there's one particular moment, and I talk about this everywhere. So apologies to your viewers and your listeners when I say this, but it's a really important message. In 2017, when I stood on a stage accepting an award at a huge big glitzy event, my tuxedo, and I use that picture a lot when I shout about success and that I do. I stood there shouting about what we'd done, and my co-directors were in tears in the background because they were so overwhelmed and so grateful. And what I wasn't telling people on that stage, albeit Gary's look at success of Gary's business. Wow, listen to him. This is great. I wasn't telling them that I had that severe depression. I wasn't telling them that day I'd been to see a cognitive behavioral therapist. I wasn't telling them that I was taking antidepressants. And it really, really bothered me because when I went back in the next day, I was like, look, we're successful. It's great. We're growing. It's amazing. And sadly, and I still question this conversation in my mind because success was a great metric to, and a great case study, if you like, if you want to get really technical here,
Hmm.
be a great case study to say, look at what happens when somebody has experienced success, but actually they still lose their identity, which I did. And I couldn't remember whether I was Gary or the business anymore. I was just the person and I was the brand. That's all I was living. I wasn't seeing my family and friends. I wasn't acknowledging them. In this room, I've got a picture of my nan who sadly passed away a few years ago, and a little angel up here, watching me and cheering me on. Downstairs, I've now got pictures everywhere. But at the time, I didn't acknowledge that I had all of those people in my life that cared about me, that loved me. And that was a real big thing because I was so caught up in the hustle of
Yeah.
things that were
That
going on.
it's that kind of that more culture, isn't it? Like
Mm.
when we get to like, well, how much is enough?
We get a bit addicted as well. I posted about this, I think it was last week. We're a little bit, we're like a bit addictive, a bit business addicts. And we get so addicted to, and perhaps it's, the neuroscience, it's all these exciting chemicals going, I've just won that next deal, or I've just hit a
Mm.
bigger target than what I've ever hit before. I remember that conversation where we were dealing with fees, and it was like, wow, that's
Yeah.
like £3,000 more than we've ever billed, and biggest fee ever, £11,000. Like, wow, how on earth like did you get to that? And then you go, oh, what about 12? What about 13? What about 14? And
Yeah.
we start to just really get addicted to the excitement and the endorphins that are
Mm.
going around our body, the dopamine, all these
Yeah.
things that are kicking in. We might ignore all the cortisol levels that are kicking off, that we're living our lives at an 8 out of 10. Um, and there is such a thing, by the way, for people to go and have a look at adrenal fatigue. And I definitely felt like that was something I was experiencing. I read it in a book and went, um, yep, this is me. When you're on the
Yeah.
third page of a book and you go,
Yep.
this sounds familiar.
Like, that's what that is. That's a
Yeah.
thing. Okay. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I know
yeah.
we have many conversations when you and I talk about labels, and I was pleased to find that label, because it was something I then could take to my doctor and I could take to my therapist and go, this is something that I'm experiencing. Because I tell you what, when I was running my life at a 4 out of 5, 4 out of 5 or an 8 out of 10, on those bad weeks when we weren't making those sales, where we weren't experiencing those highs, or something was challenging in my life, they were they were really hard. They were really, really difficult. They were
Yeah.
the ones and twos, for me. And they were the dark days, and the dark thoughts come in, and never try to act on those for for the sake of talking for it. For the, can't get my words out today. For the benefit of the podcast, and that I never acted on them. But
Yeah.
certainly that's when you start to just question everything, and you can go into some real dark days.
Yeah.
Touch wood, I've not had to go through that.
Yeah, yeah, and I really liked your analogy that you use there, kind of, like the almost yeah, the
Mm.
addiction of this perception of success, and the example you paved there, it's one of those things that I have seen countless times where you've got someone, leaning against their Ferrari, or, in this picture you would think, and we so many people have these examples, and yet so many people don't listen. We don't,
Yeah.
we go, oh, what an emotional story, and then we knuckle back down again and we cram that meeting in, and I'll just work late tonight, and tonight turns into 5 nights, and you haven't put your kids to bed for 3 weeks, and it's like, yeah, and it is like when you said addiction, I thought, yeah, it's like drugs, isn't it? Like you normalize that state of being, and then you have to up the ante again, and then you normalize that, and then you have to up the ante again, and where does it end?
Is it business dysmorphia? Are we going to try and like
Ooh,
take that
terminology. Love
take
that. Not
that
heard that
phrase? Like I saw somebody talking about it's a real challenging topic, and I don't mean to trigger anyone around
bit.
body dysmorphia, so I'll throw that in now. But I saw where people were talking about muscle dysmorphia. So people where they go out and they build muscle, and then they build bigger muscle, and they get bigger and bigger. I'm
Yeah.
doing that. I'm nowhere near that here. But we get addicted, and we look in the mirror and we go, oh, maybe I could just have a little bit more. Maybe that could be bigger. Maybe that could be bigger. And I think in business, in that same way, we do get that level of dysmorphia, or we look at in envy at the colleagues over the road, or that person that's just gone up, and we all enter these awards. Very rarely, I think I've only ever had two in my life that I've never entered an award for. Well, majority of them you enter. Some you even pay to go for the
Mm.
awards. Never wanting to do that. And yeah, we want to stand on that stage to shout about what we've done and fly that flag.
Mm.
And when we see others doing that, we want to be on that stage with them, or
Yeah.
knock them off that stage. We're a competitive bunch of people, aren't we? Entrepreneurs.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, again, I love that you're calling this out, because actually, the reality is, when the people that we're comparing ourselves to, because it's always social media, right, isn't it? Because
Mm.
when we sit down, and I know this from the conversations we have, and we compare notes as to what we're up to, we're really honest and vulnerable, and we talk about the things that are going well and the things that are shit. And that's what happens in conversation. But then on social media, we would be forgiven because, we're always putting out the positive stuff. And even when we're putting out the less positive stuff, somehow it seems to convey to people like, oh, but they're talking about that, so it's still great. It's almost it's that, and I find that so fascinating, because actually, yeah, a lot of those awards are pay to play. A lot of these accolades, or a lot of this activity, it doesn't, it's not the norm. It is, the special, and yet we look at that thinking, well, should I be doing that? Should I be working harder? Well, if I'm not getting that, it must be because I'm rubbish and I
Yeah,
must
yeah.
push.
because we start negatively talking to ourselves about you're not there, so you mustn't be doing very well, and we start, so it's so easy to compare ourselves to people. And
Yeah.
I say all of this in the context of being an entrepreneur and in a business. I must kind of, probably a good moment to bring this in is that actually, employees also experience this. They absolutely do.
Yep.
And particularly from a leadership and you know, and mental health and well-being within the view of, I've got a little finger that's in my corner, my business card, and I'll say this out loud to people that don't know me very well. So it says Gary Parsons, leadership mental health advocate and inspirational speaker. It says on my screen over there.
That
So
is
I keep
definitely who
reading
you
it,
are. Correct.
yeah, I'm like validating my own self here. Yeah. But yeah, within the world of mental health and well-being for leaders, and particularly in April 2024, I went out on this mission to say the stigma needs to be broken. This is where it all comes from, because I've lived it, right? And I think so many people can go out and talk about something. I definitely think where I add value is for me, and be able to connect with people on a different level, is that I have lived experience of this, as we've just
Mhm.
talked about. But leaders are all shapes, sizes, and types in many, many different ways, however best to reference them. And leaders can be that new manager who are leading a team. And I do think the world, will not get too technical, HR will connect with this, is that the word manager is having lots of challenge around it at the moment. Might be a I don't know, marketing lead, or a more coaching style of working.
Mhm.
So leaders are new and emerging managers. There might be people that are long established. There might be people that sit within the senior leadership team. It might be people that sit at the leadership level. They started the business, they founded that business. One thing that I have realized very well since that moment where I stood on stage with the award was that we focus so heavily on the mental health and well-being of employees. We send them on courses to do mental health first aid. I was talking about that today. We send so many people to go and do training on how they can avoid burnout as an employee, about how they can better manage their work-life balance. I'm going to throw this in here, and I'm happy for people to use this, but I prefer life-work balance, because I feel like we should be putting it first. And
Yeah.
very rarely, if at all, and I had a conversation with somebody the other day, she's like, this is a big gap. This is our blind spot. Very rarely do we talk about the mental health and well-being of leaders. It's all about the employees. And if you're leading a team, if you recognize these signs, if you're burning out, if you're working too many hours, if you feel like you're saying yes too many times, if you feel like you are pouring from that empty cup, and you are just being lumped and lumbered with all of the work and none of the reward, then you need to be more selfish. You need to start thinking about you, because the moment that you start being more selfish as a leader, the more you can be more selfless and you can support
Mhm.
others. And yeah, I think as a leader, of person founding a business, I can talk about it, but certainly I see leaders now, and I'm running a workshop in a few weeks with quite a few cohorts of managers within a college, where they are burning out. They are not delegating work. They are taking far too much work on. They are not saying no where they need to say no. And that can turn into some really unhealthy behaviors. But that could be the difference between, on one extreme, life and death. And it could also be very ill health. And I've seen people that have been off years with burnout, and that's not good, especially in a manager position. If you want to be the most selfless person to look after your team and make sure everybody is okay, that is not sustainable.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. And I think that was such a really great summary there, in terms of reminding everybody that actually leaders are employees too.
Yeah.
Like people in management position, you're an employee too. You know, like, you fall into this category. You are, I mean, unless you are one of the very few people who I'm actually yet to meet who go to work for the sheer joy of it and not for getting paid. Because let's face it, that is the motivation for why most of us who are in organizations like paid employment organizations,
Mm.
like, you go in because you love your job, sure, and because you get paid to do your job. Like if someone turned around and said, I'm sorry, we can no longer pay anybody to work in this company, I don't think you'd be staying there because, oh, but I love my job and the people are amazing. Like, no, it's not,
Mm,
that's not the trade-off. Um, and actually, yeah, I mean, you summarized it beautifully, life or death, like in the
yeah,
extreme cases, or you spoke in kind of the opening as well around like the toll on your family, like, yeah, divorces, like,
yeah.
separations, not being around your parents or your children. Like, it's just, is that the cost you want? And I want to come back to the mental health first aid thing. I've written a note, but I'm going to loop back to it a bit later.
Well, it
Um,
could get me all day on that topic as well. So I'm
we'll
like,
get,
I'll
we'll
try and
stick a
stay off my
pin.
soapbox
Yeah.
on there.
Yeah. But I want to know, because obviously you are talking about this from a lived experience perspective. You've been there. So you're not just saying like, theoretically, this is what I believe. You're like, fundamentally, I've been through it and I understand exactly what happened, how I got there, and how I fixed it. So I'm assuming that when you go into organizations and like say you're doing these workshops, you're helping people with the and how to prevent
Yeah.
piece, right? So what are the kind of things that people should really be, we've got their attention, we want you to not die. So what is it that people need to know?
Yeah, and it feels like a bit of a cop out, but that's it. That's the very first thing that people need to do here. Like self-awareness. It's a phrase that comes up so many times when I'm talking to individuals, when I'm talking to management teams. I would say for those sorry, for HR, I should say, what does it look like when you are reading your engagement survey? What are people saying about your managers? Are they accessible? Are they actually not complaining about accessibility because they probably are too accessible? But what impact is it having from that point of view? But yeah, going back to your question, self-awareness first and foremost. If you are sitting there and you are starting to question how you are leading a team, and let's stick to leaders, how you are leading a team, then that's a great start. It really, really is. I think then the next thing is action. Of course, it's action. What things can you do to put in place? This is exclusively talking to you about this, Katie. I've got a video going out that
Ooh.
may well be out by the time this podcast
Well, I was
goes
going to say
out.
you probably, so I just for full transparency, we are recording this on the 21st of Feb. You probably got a good 6 weeks before this goes out. So
That's fine.
so
People will be
people
like,
can
"Oh yeah,
go
we know
back
that."
and they can Google you, or they will already be connected with you on LinkedIn, I'm sure. So they can go and find whatever it is you're about to put out, which you're going to tell us about. And that is,
Absolutely. So I've developed something called I can't even get the words out, the self framework. So it's all about selfish leadership. So I've said it already, but just to reiterate, it's trying to get leaders to be more selfish with how they lead. And that sounds a really negative word. It's not. As I've just said earlier, and I'm going to use some cliches for a moment, so please stay tuned in. There's these the so that cliche of taking that mask, when we're on the airplane and they say, take your mask before you help others, and absolutely, like, sometimes it feels like we are looking after people within our teams like our children, and okay, we have an adult relationship, of course we do, but we look after them, we might mother them and father them in so many ways. But absolutely put your mask on first, and then look at how full your cup is. Are you pouring from that cup and you are looking for the dregs in the bottom of that cup? It's not Mary Poppins's handbag. There's not a never-ending
yeah.
amount of tools that are coming out. I'm extending this analogy even more. There is a certain amount a certain amount of energy, that leadership energy that we walk into a business with and support a team in. If you're in a negative equity, negative energy level, then there's a problem. So the self framework absolutely goes around that. So I'll just run through it very
No,
quickly.
please, yeah.
So the S is all about setting boundaries. That could be your emotional or physical boundaries. Saying no is a really nice word. I've there's a great we've said the F word on it already, but The Magical Art of Not Giving a Fuck is a
Yep.
brilliant book. I read that enlightened within the first chapter of going, as someone that enjoys being quite sociable, absolutely can say no to people very easily. I love the fact of going, I don't want to go to that party. Here's a £10 voucher. Congratulations. So
Yeah.
setting those physical boundaries, but emotionally as well. So don't get too caught up in all of
Mm.
those emotional drama energies. Part of that is a drama triangle, but I'm giving you far too
Yeah.
much information and value now. So definitely come and look and listen to the videos.
Yeah.
E is all about, so go
So
for
no, I
it.
was just say, just as a build on your point about no, like there's a saying within the DEI space which is no is a complete sentence.
Mm, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gift that back
Mm.
to you, seeing as you're gifting us.
Absolutely. So elevate well-being. So just looking at that even more from your point of view, it elevate well-being is probably the most complicated one. So I won't go in depth on every single one, but elevate well-being, absolutely, you need to be doing that. We're talking about you, remember, you as a leader or your leaders in your organization, like you as a leader need to elevate your well-being. It needs to be higher up your list. So S, so set boundaries, E, elevate well-being, and then L is lead with intention. So we talked about self-awareness. So that's really just be more intentional in how you lead that team, how you lead your life, and what you want from the family. We talked about that. How do you want to be seeing your child? Do you want to be picking them up from school if you've got flexible working? Just lead with intention. And yeah, I feel like that is the most valuable one out of all of them, is the L. And then F is about fostering growth. So yes, you could sit down and you could sit down with your team, and then you can start listening to their pains, the challenges, what they're going through. But actually start looking at how you can foster growth and pass on some of your knowledge and your experience within that team. Instead of sitting down for a one-to-one and going through those pains, start looking at growth plans and stretch goals that you might have within that team. Yeah, so that's the self
Yeah.
framework. I will say that I was talking, I'm in the process of writing a book, as you know. Not many people well of instilling this into some 46,000 words I have at the moment. It's quite crazy.
Congratulations.
Um, and I've got to say 40,000 words in. I realized that selfish framework might be quite good. So maybe that's going to be volume 2, but the ISH is, I'm not going to give that to you now, so you'll have to wait for book number
It's still a
2.
work in progress. We'll let him keep that under his hat. It's all good.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to buy the first book first when it's out, let alone the
It's
second
like
one.
like an expansion pack for the
Do you
ish.
know, yeah, that's probably
The
what I'll
ish
do. It's
expansion pack.
like
Love it.
revised. The book has been, what do they do? Well, they do a revised book for the
Yes.
anniversary.
Yeah.
But the ISH is all around impact. So where do we actually look at, when we so just quickly saying those again. So set boundaries, elevate well-being, lead with intention, and foster growth. Why? What happens on the back of it? And very quickly you will see results, and that's what HR teams want. That's what finance teams want. That's what businesses want. And actually, there are so many results that come on the back of it. It's a huge productivity tool that you can use within your business as a leader to be more selfish. And it really has been quite an interesting journey seeing the reaction to it. So
Yeah.
I'd love to get some feedback on it and just hear what people listen.
Yeah.
And what do you think, Katie? Do
Yeah,
you
well,
think
you know
it?
me, I love a challenging concept because I think anything that makes you a little bit jarred and sit up and listen is a good thing. Because I had the same thing. I remember, so we are in the Professional Speaking Association together, and you
We
shared a
are.
video in our chat, which I thought was amazing, but it was you talking about selfish leadership. And
Mm.
that my initial reaction to it was I got prickly. Like I had to pay attention. I was like, oh, this is like, oh, this gets me. Okay.
Mm.
Because you're correct when you said it's not a word that we kind of associate with something positive or productive. It's a word that has a negative rap, right?
Mm.
But actually what you're saying is, and this is what I'm hearing at least, is if you want to show up for other people because you clearly do, that's what's got you on the road to burnout.
Mm.
um you have to put yourself first, because if it's, I'm going to go a bit RuPaul, but like if you don't love yourself, how can you love anyone else, right?
Absolutely.
We're there,
Amen.
aren't we? Right? So
Mm.
it's like you've got to be selfish in order to be selfless,
Yeah.
and and balancing that.
I had a conversation with somebody that's coming onto my podcast, Leaders in Disguise. There you go, throwing that in there, Katie. I'm sorry.
Plug away, my love.
um, but yeah, somebody that's coming onto it over the next few months, and he was talking about his wife, who was had cancer. She was going through a really bad time. Felt it was all going really, really well, And then that's when the work started to really kick in. When she got the all clear,
Mm.
actually, that's when everything started to get really challenging for her. And he said, looking back, he said to me, I probably should have been a little bit more selfish back then because I wasn't looking after me. And I say this because I want people to relate this to, it's not just about business, it's how we live our lives inside and outside of business.
Yeah.
And when, for me, for somebody that's experienced challenging mental health, and he talked about his wife that was going through cancer. We are, I these are my words, by the way. We are the worst people to be around because we cry, we laugh, we are on highs and lows more often than anybody else. We are unpredictable, and yes, absolutely, we are going through really difficult challenges. Of, like I say, it might be cancer, it might be loss, it might be a diagnosis of any sorts, but we are really difficult people to be around. And you know that's hard to say out loud, actually, really, really hard to say out loud. And one of the things that this guy said to me, who's coming onto the podcast, he said, I needed to be more selfish at that point because I spent and dedicated every moment of my day inside and out to making sure that she was okay. And people looked past me and said, oh, how is Katie? How's Katie doing?
Mm.
I'll just use a random
Yeah,
name
yeah.
there. But it was like,
Yeah, rather
how,
than Gary, how are you?
yeah, how are you?
And also then how is Katie? Yeah.
Yeah, one of my best friends won't mind me saying this. So her husband got diagnosed with testicular cancer, and I love them both, albeit they've abandoned me to Scotland now, and they've gone from here in the East Midlands up to Scotland on a really wet, rainy day today. I hope it's not sunny up there, and
But we
yeah,
know it'll
like
always be beautiful.
it's always going to be nice, isn't
Yeah.
it? I love it up in Scotland, in Glasgow. And that was an awful accent,
That was
Gary.
terrible.
So,
Don't do that again.
um, but I remember at the time when he was going through it, I kept asking her how she was, and he kept telling me how she was. And they were the most selfless people. They were constantly looking
Yeah.
out for each other. And I think that's a match made in heaven, by the way. Like when they're both looking out for each other, that's a beautiful couple, and they are. But like putting that back into a work context, we are there. We spend a lot of our lives in work, and we need to be showing up for those employees in the same way that we might show up for a partner.
Mm.
But whatever challenges that they are bringing into work or they're experiencing in work, we can't devote ourselves to solving that problem. And that's the drama triangle. For those that don't know it, it's about the victim and the hero and the villain. A great, I can't remember the person's name now that designed and invented it. But we were so tempted to run in and be the superhero and solve all of those problems. But very easily we can turn into the victim or the villain. And that's where the selfishness comes in. I'm getting far too technical now, but
No,
ultimately it's
not at all.
true.
It makes complete sense. It is. It's about that, it's about checking in with yourself, taking stock, not just kind of uh, going straight at something. It's about, pause for a second.
Mm,
I often talk in the work that I do around like you get the stimulus and then your response, and that you need that gap in the middle to pause and just hang on. What am I doing? How does this
yeah.
play out? Is this the best use of my time, of my energy, of my thing? And is that what I need to do for that person? Or can I better serve them if I just
Mm.
hang on a second?
100%, 100%. I worked with someone years ago. She talked about that pausing and reflecting and then resetting, an amazing lady called Emma. And that was very much about, yeah, how many, do you know that phrase where they say like 5 steps backwards and 10 steps forward? I can't think of the right phrase now. But you've got to step back a few steps to then really accelerate and go forward.
Mm.
And I think that you hit the nail on the head with that, is that we've got to pause, we've got to reflect, just take a little bit of a step back, 1 or 2 steps back, and go, who am I here for right now? Am I too in this? Am I too involved? And for
Yeah.
those that can see me, like very much like, am I too in this? Or actually, do I need to just step back a little bit, look around me? That I did this in first aid, and maybe this is the connection for you. I was in the Red Cross when I was didn't go to Cubs or Scouts. I went to the Red Cross, and the first thing they teach you when you walk into a room where somebody's lying on the floor is to look around you, take a step back, look around you, look for any danger. And that might be glass all over the floor. It might be that someone's standing with a knife in the corner. Like, you look around
Mhm.
you and check your environment, and then you go to support that person in front of you.
Yeah.
And you've inspired me just thinking of that just now. But certainly that's what we should be doing. Look at the environment that you're going into, and if you
Mhm.
haven't done it, step back and look and assess those dangers, those risks. Do that risk assessment for you, and then go in and deal with it. But don't
Yeah.
just dive in feet first.
Yeah, and I think that's a fantastic analogy there as well, because we should be assessing whether scenarios are safe. Like that would should always be something like, is it safe for me to enter? Because is it we have a similar conversation in the inclusion work, which is just because you can get yourself involved in something doesn't mean it's A, safe for you, or B, you're doing that is going to make it safe for the person you're trying to help.
Mm.
Like, you have to be conscious of your situation, and also you're the emotions that you're bringing into it, because sometimes like we're driven emotionally. It's usually an emotional response, isn't it, that makes us
Yeah.
want to help a person, right? And if we aren't protecting our own emotions, or at least conscious of what's going on within us, and we go rushing in to help because, oh, we must do this thing, this is the best thing, we're just bringing all of our shit and we're adding that in as well. And sometimes that works, sometimes that's okay, and sometimes, like you say, it completely blows it up, and that's
Yeah.
not helpful either.
A dramatic situation doesn't need any more drama into it,
Yeah.
any more passionate people. If you've got an angry person and an upset person, they don't need an equally passionate person walking through the room. Emotions are great, but when there's lots of each type of emotion in a room, it's dangerous. It really is.
Yeah.
But yeah, taking it back to that serious place, I think when we take that step back, we just are looking after ourselves, and we can still make a difference to that situation, like you've just said. But we do it in the right way, and we do it in a way that only looks out for them, but it also includes us, and
Mm.
identifies our role in that,
Yeah.
and where we can and cannot make a difference,
Yeah.
and that's
And
fine.
sometimes our role can be identifying someone else to go in and sort it out. Is there someone better placed than me to be getting involved in this? Again, because I think from a leadership perspective, sometimes we can think, I'm responsible for this team, I have to be the one to. Whereas actually you can be way more effective if you're like, am I the right person because I am their boss, or I am their, like, should it be me?
Mm.
Can I send someone else in around the side who's going to have a better thing, and then I can be brought up to speed later if needed, because
Yeah,
maybe my presence, from an authority perspective, could be like unstabilizing, destabilizing, to
decentralized.
the situation. So there are so many aspects, aren't there?
Yeah, I was just thinking of an examples that comes to mind, having worked within HR people, and it's that example where you have to make somebody redundant. Now, you could make Johnny redundant, but does Johnny need your help, first of all? Actually, is Johnny more than employable everyone else? Or could you say, right, okay, Johnny, I'm going to get your CV sorted for you. I'm going to work with you and make sure that you've got an amazing reference to take elsewhere. That could be a really nice, reasonable step to go and be able to support somebody. Or you could say, I'm going to dedicate every hour to you this and the whole of this month to help you find a job. And I'll be there and I'll debrief you and I'll drive you to the interviews and I'll make sure that I'm always there for you and we'll get you a job. One of those doesn't sound very sustainable, does it? Don't know which
Yeah,
one, if
one of
it's
those
very
is not the
obvious.
one you're going to choose.
Mm. And I've seen this because I've done some work in this space, and I've been chatting to a guy recently about potential work that we could even do together within outplacement. And lots of companies now will say, look, we really value you as an employee and we want you to do well. And it's not your fault that we're making you redundant. What we're going to do is going to pay somebody to coach you, help you find a job, and get your CV sorted. And
Yeah.
companies can pay £3,000-4,000 to them, which is nothing for the amount of money that they pay to recruit people. Like, think about the severance packages, the
Yeah.
whatever they might be. If you've
Yeah.
got somebody on a £60,000, £4,000 is really not nothing when you take into account the 3 months' wages that you're paying to look at the saving that you're making in the business because you're making redundant. And actually, you want to care and you want to do the
Yeah.
right thing. £3,000-4,000 to pay somebody to go and find them a job, great.
Mm. Yeah, and
Companies
I think
will
that's a
take
really,
employees that don't cost them recruitment fees, so they'll be even happier elsewhere. And Johnny's
yeah.
got a job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's a really good shout around the outplacement services because yeah, it's just thinking further, isn't it, about yeah, who is the right person with the right skill set and the right way to be doing the thing that we achieves the outcome. Yeah, is it
Yeah,
my hard work or is it an outcome that is required? Like what's the focus? Yeah, I love that.
exactly. I think it's
Oh,
just, so I was just going to say, I guess the example that I use is really that you don't have to do everything yourself. You can just outsource. And outsourcing, I've talked about very literally, like go and get someone else to do the recruitment or find the person a job. But it might just be, do you know what? I'm really busy. I've got lots going on. I need to manage my boundaries. I need to get a colleague to come and support. And it might be like, do you know what, Katie, I need your help with this. And I think it's not, we did a workshop on it many, many months ago at the Professional Speaking Association about asking for help. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. And
yeah,
it doesn't mean you don't know what you're
yeah,
doing. And it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It means
yeah,
that you just are assessing that level of time and effort that you need to put into it. And you're being a little bit more selfish, and that's fine because there's somebody else that could equally, maybe better, maybe where, they can go in there and they can do an all right job, and that is okay.
yeah, yeah. In fact, I would argue that knowing when to strategically ask for help um is absolutely, oh god, there's a phrase you just used there. My menopause brain has just erased it from my memory, but you was
Just
like,
asking for help, yeah.
yeah, it's not the weakness, it is actually that's the strength.
Yeah.
That's the thing that demonstrates that you know what you're doing,
And we
is
don't have to
you
have
know when to,
190% of our workload on our desk. You
yeah.
can just be going, I'd like to not get near 100% because because I'm trying to create some capacity for the rest of the week. Do me a favor because you get involved in that.
It's like a
Da-da,
gear
simple.
change in a car as well, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
if you drove everywhere in first gear, your engine's like, like
Yeah. How
you
quickly is
can
that going to burn
absolutely
out?
live life
Literally.
like that. Like
Mm.
you can be, Joe, I was going to make a really awful age-related stereotype there, and I'm not going to do that now. But I was just like, yeah, do you know, you can be that person that drives everywhere in first gear, revving the tits off your car. Like you can do that. That's still
Yeah.
going to get you from point A to point B. And your car will be done in a matter of months. Or you can be the
Yeah.
person that drives economically, changes gears, uses the
Yeah.
machine in the way that it is
Responsibly.
intended to be used, which is, with all of its capacities in all of the ways that it's supposed to work.
And
Yeah,
doesn't burn out and doesn't blow up. Like
yeah,
let's use some real good, analogies there. It doesn't blow up, it
yeah.
doesn't burn out, it doesn't go to the garage for months to be repaired. You don't need a whole new engine. Like, yeah.
Doesn't annoy the tits off everybody else around you.
Yeah, exactly. You're making lots of loud noises all the time and screeching
Yeah,
brakes and engines.
because I also know. So I've also been that person that did too much, pushed myself too far, stretched myself too thin, worked too many hours. Like, and that was in HR. It was bad. And at the time, I was just trying to do the best job. Like we said, this is exactly what we say. You're just trying to do the best job you can. I'm just showing up. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And it was through the guise of selflessness, but actually there was probably the wrong type of selfishness, which was like I need to be the one doing these things.
Yeah.
Whereas actually that wasn't the case. But yeah, it dawned on me one day when I was in a meeting and I snapped at my boss. She asked something, and to be fair, it was probably a frustrating question, but it did not warrant the response that I gave.
The tolerancy level is
Oh
just
yeah, because I went,
way.
"Meh," and then one
Yeah.
more thing happened, and I heard it, and I felt myself do it, and the shame of like, oh my God, I just did that, and I obviously apologized, and you do the things you do, but it was that recognition of like that is well out of character for me.
Mm.
Where did that come from? And it was that accumulation of all of those moments that culminated in that, and just absolutely viciously cutting her down. And you just think, damn, like not appropriate. Probably could have got into a lot of trouble for it. You know,
Yeah. And I always say there's never an excuse, but there's always a reason. And right there, you're not saying, look, I want you to excuse me entirely. And you're just saying, look, this is the reason why I'm being like I am, but I don't want you to excuse me whatsoever.
yeah,
and actually, you're quite right. People are listening to this and they can recognize this in their husbands, their wives, their family, their friends, and their colleagues and their managers within their business. Then there's a problem. How many times have people snapped in your business? Those are the people that need
Yeah.
support, because
Yeah.
the detrimental effect that that has on your business and the culture is not great
Yeah.
for that individual, let alone the
Yeah.
team that they're trying their blooming best to support.
Yeah, yeah, and if I may as well, there's some synchronicity. The episode that's going to or scheduled to go out ahead of yours is with Verity Glasgow, who is from a charity called One Plus One, and she talks all about relationship dynamics, and she talks about exactly this. So taking it out of a work context and put it in a relationship context, her ethos is around like when when you end up having that spat about the washing up. She's
Hmm.
like, it's not about the washing up, it's just that's the thing, because everything layered, that's the
Yeah.
thing that caused the explosion. But that's not what it is, it's
And it might be completely all the things that are outside of the house that have got
yeah.
nothing to do with you and I, but have added to that for the environment that we're
Absolutely.
in.
Yeah, it's
Mm.
that boiling point. So I know, and you've mentioned this as well, so thank you because it led us into this amazing discussion, but around your podcast, Leaders in Disguise. So tell us a bit about that, because you interview leaders much like this, don't you? But give us a bit of background as to what that's about.
Yeah, so Leaders in Disguise was started from that mission in April 2024, which is to break the stigma of mental health and well-being and leadership. It came from that day where I stood on stage and I accepted the award in the business that I was in, and we said, I said I want to go out and tell the world about what I've gone through, what I do, and and the challenges that I faced. My therapist was being amazing, and I felt like I had this superhero cape to go and take over the world. And rightly or wrongly, and I still question that conversation now. What my co-director said to me was, should we really be doing this when we're trying to grow the business? And and I don't. And he said to me, I don't agree with it, and I know I'm saying all the wrong things. And I was like, okay. And I listened to him, and he said, ultimately, his words were, there are still suit wearing, grey haired old men in rooms deciding, that stereotype of men deciding what money goes to what business, and if they hear that you've got challenges with your mental health, are they going to invest in the business? And I stood back and thought, he's right, but he's not wrong, but he's not right. And that is a challenge. And can we risk it? So I reluctantly bit my lip for 7 years. And in April 2020, when I set out on that mission to break the stigma of mental health and well-being in leadership, the first thing I did was detach myself away from that brand. And this year I've now fully exited from that business, which is, I should celebrate that. That's exciting. After 15 years, I've exited that business now. But in April I'd stepped back and I was doing 1 day a week, and I was non-executive director. I wasn't seen and heard. I stepped down as CEO, and I changed all my branding from all the way. I'm wearing blue today. I changed all my branding away from blue to bright yellow and black.
Mm.
If you've ever seen me at networking events, that's definitely me in the yellow coat normally.
It's
Uh,
always you, yeah.
always. I need to get a couple more. And the best vintage bargain I ever got was that. Um, and I realized going out there and telling people about my story was one thing, but how could I get people to listen even more? So there's two things that I did. My good friend of mine, Sarah, said to me, who interviewed me for the first episode of Leaders in Disguise. She's done a degree in positive psychology, really, really interesting. And she said to me, Gary, you need to back some of the sort of statistics. So I went out and found some really interesting research that said 73% of leaders, of founders of businesses, experience mental health challenges. I'm just going to say that again, 73%. So 3/4 of, not that advert that you see on TV that says 1 in 4 will experience mental health challenges. 3 out of 4-ish
Mm.
will experience mental health challenges. So I saw it and went, I need to be telling my story, and more people need to be telling theirs as well. And we need to be having these conversations more. So I reached out to the community that I knew and said, this is what I'm doing. This is a story that I want to be telling. And yeah, mine was the first. I just opened up and talked about everything. My um, another podcast in itself, my facial palsy that I experienced when I was 18, my journey that I've been on, the mental health and well-being challenges, despite the success, despite the success that I've had, that coincidentally was going on. And I've had people like people that have started businesses that have had a smaller business, right through to people like Peter, who've multimillionaire, that have opened up exclusively and talked about the time he sold a business, did incredibly well. Didn't quite say how much money he made, but let's say a lot. He can choose certainly which car he's going to drive out in that day. And he talked about going home that day he sold his business, took lots of tablets, drank lots of alcohol, and woke up in A&E having his stomach pumped because it was too much for him. And that is a guy that many people will be shocked to hear. You know, he nearly bought Derby County Football Club. He was a shareholder in a consortium. If it can happen to Peter, it can happen to anybody. And that, you know, they are the 73% of leaders that are experiencing mental health challenges. And yeah, Leaders in Disguise is lifting that mask off and showing that what we go through is not to invalidate their experience, but it is normal, like normal things to happen to normal people. And sadly, it seems that it happens more often with leaders in businesses as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that harps back to the comment that your previous business partner made, which is, yeah, but they're almost like, well, what will people think if you share this? And it's like, okay, but this is the risk of what will happen to people if we don't, you know?
You're fooling yourself, aren't you? If you're
Yeah.
in, so, and I will say, by the way, in April, when we started finding guests for the podcast, I spoke with a very successful entrepreneur, and he said, and he's an investor, he's a multi-investor, and let's think like Dragon's Den without being on Dragon's Den. He's done a lot, and he said to me, "Do you know what, Gary?" And this really helped where it was. He said, "Do you know what, Gary? If I'd known what I now know, and you're asking for investment in your business, I would have invested in it more with you in the business than without you in it, because I can see the honesty, I get the authenticity, and thank you for being vulnerable." And do you know what? I stand by that now. And that's how I live my life authentically and with vulnerability, because we need to be having those conversations more, because those investors that are investing in companies and naively thinking that those leaders aren't going through a mental health challenge, well, 28% of them are probably you'd be lucky to find that 28%
Yeah.
really. But how strong and how amazing would it be to work with a leader that has been there? And I don't say this with any badge of honor whatsoever, but I've had learnt experience of being there, done it, got the t-shirt. I've had CBT. I've worked with people that have helped me get out of those holes that I now use in so many different ways. Those transferable skills are amazing. Like, I'd rather invest in somebody that has gone through it the second or third time than somebody that's never gone through it at all, because we've got the tools, a
Yeah.
massive
And I
toolkit.
think the kind of the future build on that as well is, would you not rather invest in an organization who is cognizant of this and has put mechanisms in place to make sure they are not included in that, was it 72, 73% figure? Like, because they know it happens and they're doing something differently, rather than they think they're not included in that figure just because no one's talking about it.
Yeah, and it shocked me. It shocked me because I was trying to have these conversations at networking events, and people were like, "Oh God, no! Oh, don't want to talk about this."
Yeah.
And then when I started throwing these statistics out to people, they were going, "Yeah, I can relate to that because I've gone through this, and
Yeah.
it's working. I'm certainly not the person that has done it, and I'm not going to take credit for doing, because it's happening outside of people even knowing I exist. But I will take credit for the conversations that I am hearing and I am being around. And I'm so pleased that stigma is changing, that we can have these conversations. And the more work that I do, and thank you for inviting me onto the podcast to talk about it with a whole new audience, is like, the more we talk about this, the more we realize it is just happening. And do you know what? Everywhere I go now, the guy with the big bright yellow jacket, they come to me and they talk to me, and it doesn't matter if I've got 4 people they've never met stood next to me, they talk about it, because there's a lot of power in conversation. And I feel like there's a revival of 80s adverts if anyone knows anybody at BT, I'd love to go along and like be the revival of It's Good to Talk. I really want to
Yeah.
why have they not brought that back with the mental health movement generally?
Yep.
But
Great
like
call.
they could win loads of business customers. Maybe it's the B2B side of what they do. They're like, can I be the face of that, please? Facial inclusivity. I'd love to be that with somebody with a facial visible difference.
Yeah.
Like, come on, tick 2 boxes. I really don't mind being the token. Let's get that out there again, because it is good to talk, and especially when whether you're a middle-aged guy or a middle-aged woman, no matter what we experience, no matter what gender or identity that you may experience, we all have challenges. And like I said, normal people experience normal challenges, and let's just start to just be honest with each other.
Yeah,
I said
absolutely.
that
I
so
couldn't
passionately
agree
and
more.
excited then.
Yeah. Now, ordinarily, that would be the perfect place that I would probably end this because that's such a beautiful wrap up. But you alluded to it just then, and I don't want to let this opportunity pass before we talk about it because you said around the facial difference work that you're doing. And I know this is something new that you're really kind of starting to lean into and wanting to bring more awareness to. So, what would you like to say about that for the people that are listening so that they can find out more when they connect with you?
Yeah, that's really kind of you. Thank you. And yeah, if you're still listening, then then please do listen even more. Because I when I was 18, I woke up one day with half my face was paralyzed. I was quite an entrepreneur at an early age of 13, 14, selling computers to my teachers. My mum, who I talk about in every conversation, and today's not any exception, would drop me off at the end of the road and would help me on that journey. So at 18, quite a difficult time to wake up and experience facial paralysis. Now, at any one time in the UK, it's estimated that 100,000 people will have facial palsy. 100,000 people, that's huge. And I was one of those people that woke up with probably the most common form of facial palsy, whether you're born with a condition or experience something an event in your life that it happens. They are Yeah, it's a huge challenge for people. So for me at 18, that genuinely felt like my life was over, my business life was over. So to be able to sit here now and talk to you about a 7-figure multi-award winning business about mental health is huge. I And the masks, the leaders in disguise, comes from a place where I talk about the mask that I wore for 2001. It was when I experienced Bell's palsy for me and facial paralysis. In 24 years, only 3 or 4 years of that I've been able to have these conversations, certainly without crying. I'm a million times better, depending on what day you catch me on. I'm a million times better at talking about it. But yeah, for 20 years I wore that metaphorical mask, and I very sadly did everything I could do not to smile, because when I smiled, people would see my facial difference, which is my preferred term. I'll get into that in a moment. um yeah, my facial difference. I remember going out one night and somebody saying to a friend, "What's up with his face?" And that you can hear the pain in it now, that cringe
Yeah.
pain. And all I wanted to do was go home. She probably just meant, why does he look so miserable? He's not up dancing. But I didn't hear it like that. And I forgive her if she ever listens and recognizes that comment. I'm sure she didn't. And yeah, now the work that I do, I'm proudly a lead volunteer of. I've got my piece of paper here and in front. I'll show you for people that aren't seeing the. I'm a now lead volunteer at Facial Palsy UK. So, like I say, 100,000 people at any one time in the UK will experience facial palsy of the many different types. And I've just proudly been invited along. So Monday of this week. So yeah, the last week of February, whilst we're recording this for people, I went down to London on Monday to be involved in a brand new inclusivity pilot with Face Equality International. So Face Equality International, as it sounds, supports 37 different members across the world that are fighting for people that experience prejudice, hate, that are struggling for inclusion within the workplace and and in society, and giving them the confidence and supporting all of the amazing charities are out there that are really fighting this cause for visible difference. So yeah, in London on Monday, I went along with a really good friend of mine, John O'Lancaster, who lots of people will know has Treacher Collins syndrome, and he is such an inspirational guy. Tawange, who is working with me, she has a scar, which was an accident that she had when she was 18, I think. And yeah, facial equality really focus on the visible difference community, whether it's a facial palsy, whether it's a visible difference. Adam Pearson, you will know about. He's another guy on this program. It's quite a big program. Adam Pearson, you'll know from the Golden Globe Awards, the BAFTA Awards. He has a visible difference. He was on A Different Man. And I'll let you go and Google him and see Adam. He's an amazing guy. I just the enthusiasm and what he does from an ambassador point of view is great. And yeah, I've been chosen by Face Equality of a small group of people to go out and deliver on a groundbreaking inclusivity program around facial equality. And I absolutely am feeling full imposter syndrome when you've got people like Jono and Adam out there that are on stages across the globe and on TV and films. And it's such an honor to be part of that.
And a worthy part of that, I would very much like to state. And what I from in hearing you talk about that, what I just want people hearing this to really think about, and especially for those of you within organizations within HR teams or with any kind of responsibility for the people within your business, if you as an individual just for one moment stop and think about your face, because for those of us that use like vision and sight for identification purposes, it's the one thing we use to tell each other apart. So think about your face and then think about how you would feel if something significant changed that for you, what that might do to how you feel about yourself and about society and about your self-esteem and like all of these things. And now reach out to Gary and have a conversation about what you can do in your workplace to engage. Maybe whether that's with Face Equality International, with Gary directly. Like think about that, because I don't know anyone really who is talking about this to this extent. And I can imagine the significance for anybody who is in a position where they have a facial difference. If you can engage at this level, I can imagine that would mean the world, right? So I strongly ask people to speak to Gary for more information.
Thank you. I'd leave you with another statistic with that I
Mm.
learned on Monday. So whilst I talk about 1 in 100,000 people will experience facial palsy, by the way, that includes people that have strokes, have cancer. Let's start using words that people do know about here.
Yeah.
And TIA. I know somebody that had facial palsy for a short amount of time with a TIA. Hey, he's on the podcast doing his episode too. And yeah, there's 100,000 people out there right now in the UK that are experiencing it. So how many people in your workplace may know somebody, may wake up one day like I did with Bell's palsy, which is the most common form, or an amazing lady, Madeline, who I'm working with at the moment to help her in her organization, where she was born with full facial paralysis and she doesn't know anyone like her. But the biggest stat for me is the visible difference community. Think about how many people you have in your organization. Is it 100? Is it 1,000? The statistic is one, and it's estimated 1 in 111. So 111, 1 in 111 people will have a visible difference. If you've got 1,000 people in your business, that's 111 people that you
Yeah.
have in your business that have a visible difference. It matters. And if you're not talking about it, if you're not bringing it into your inclusivity, into your recruitment practices, into how you support and engage colleagues on something that's episodic or something that they have experienced one day or been born with it, then there's a problem. And that can be some things that we think are quite minor but are huge, like acne or scars. It's definitely something people need to be thinking about,
Yeah.
certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we're back to stigma, aren't we? Because it's
Mm,
the comment example that you gave, even if people aren't saying those words out loud, it's probably happening inside their head. And this is
yeah.
the stigma part, that we need to make it okay for everyone to exist at work as they are. and not feel like that, not just feeling like someone could be judging them whether they're saying it or not. Like,
Yeah. I think
yeah.
it's that inclusivity and belonging. I think that was a word that I picked up from Madeline recently, is that she genuinely feels like she belongs in the organization where she works. And the people that she knows that experience similar conditions to her don't feel like that. And it's rare to hear that. And it's sad to hear that. And I think there's so much more that can be done for the visible difference community, particularly. That 1 in 111 people definitely needs to be changing. And let's see more representation on TV. I know Changing Faces are doing huge campaigns around it. I saw them on This Morning this week. Let's get more people with a visible difference on adverts on TV, on the BT advert about talk.
Yeah. Come
Yeah,
on, BT, sign
good to
up, Gary.
talk. I know. Let's send this clip to them, Katie,
I will.
and let's do that, because yeah, the difference it makes to people's lives, and the productivity benefit you'll get out of your business. It's a no-brainer here. Come on, finance people, like
Yeah. Yeah.
get
If
your
you're going to just
finance
boil
key
it
out
down
of
to the business
productivity.
case, there is a return on investment for this work.
Huge.
100%. And if you want to talk about that, I've got all the stats on the return on investment of inclusion work. So
Exactly.
we can
Just
pull that apart.
just go and look at Katie's website. I'm sure there's something somewhere. Like, get a blog out, remind people, because there is. Yeah, it's nice to do, but it's obvious to do.
Yeah, totally. Gary Parsons, thank you so much for coming along on the Speaking of Inclusion podcast. Now, is there anything that you came along to say that you haven't had an opportunity to say?
You've absolutely helped me to talk about everything whatsoever. Apart from, I've not talked about how wonderful you are, and yeah, certainly the support that you've given me personally is, professionally, and I'll get random messages from you of your support, of a cheerleading little gif that you send me to champion the work that I do. So yeah, thank you for helping me on my best days that I possibly have, and some of my darkest days as well. You're always there, you're always present. So thank you for authentically living, Katie Allen. If you're not working with Katie Allen, what the hell are you doing listening to this podcast?
Thanks, mate.
Yeah. So
Yeah, well,
yeah, I
thank
say
you.
that holding every bit of emotion in on this conversation, which most conversations I end up crying, but yeah, thank you, and thanks for the opportunity. It's yeah, I definitely feel like I've been on a soapbox for a lot of this, and it needs to be said.
100%. Thank you. So, Gary, if people want to get in touch with you, what is the best place for them to connect with you?
No, I'm nowhere. No, I'm only joking. So yeah,
Not true.
absolutely. Yeah. So find me in a room wearing a yellow jacket is one. And yeah, social media. So I've the great privilege to be called Gary Parsons with an S on the end of Parsons. So just look me up for Gary Parsons UK, predominantly on LinkedIn, do lots of Instagram, and garyparsons.uk being the website. Of course, you can go on to Spotify. We have a fully produced, my amazing friend Darren, who supports me to be able to produce the Leaders in Disguise podcast. That is on YouTube. Again, Gary Parsons UK, or simply just called Leaders Disguise without the in bit, because apparently that was taken.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Gary. It's been my absolute honor.
Thank you very much. Really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you. There you go. I can hear you now.
Hello.
Hi. You were coming out of my microphone, and I was like, yeah, my microphone's a microphone, not a
Yeah.
speaker.
Do you know, I get that when I have little mini speakers on my house. I've got one in the bathroom in the shower because I like the radio on in the shower. And if anybody sends me like a message or tries to ring me, I've had it where I've tried to reply to a voicemail when I've got out the shower, but I've still got it connected to the speaker, and the speaker is acting as a microphone. So I get people going like, "What? Have you fallen down a well?" I'm like, "Yes, send me an animal to rescue
Send
me."
Lassie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But apparently it sounds like I'm literally down the bottom of something. I'm like, "Oh yeah, because it's going through a speaker." Who knew that speakers could do that?
Sorry, bear with me a moment.
Yeah, you're okay. Don't worry. I'm
Yeah.
still chewing my gum, so I must remember to get rid of that in a second.
And it's really annoying because that curtain looks like it's not been ironed, and it has. But other than that, it's
Sorry, I'm
fine.
sorry.
I was
You
just
iron your
expect
curtains.
I was expecting it to be a bit of a brighter day, so it's just unfortunately where I sit, I have all of that coming in, so it ends up doing that.
Oh, yeah, shadow face. Yeah, I've got like massive like lights either side to try and
Have you?
counteract the window. Yeah. But no, go back to it. So you iron your curtains.
Yeah, I do. I had to iron them. Um, yeah,
Is
a
that
friend
because they're
gave
in
them to
shot though,
me.
or do you iron all of the curtains in your house?
Um, I had to iron these, but my other curtains I didn't iron, and they've naturally dropped out.
Okay.
These ones are an absolute nightmare. They're what Darren gave me actually, and he just had them in a ball on the floor because
Ah,
they didn't
okay.
fit his window. So I went, "Brr."
For a second then I thought we were getting a window like into your soul of like, I need complete parallel pleats of perfect curtain in my life. And I was like, ooh, interesting.
It's when you've got something like that though, and it's
Yeah.
like it
No,
looks like
I
it's not
that
ironed,
that
and
I
like
get, yeah.
it's like, look, they are ironed.
Right. So you understand that the whole premise of this is that I record everything because this is absolutely going in at the end as a
Yeah,
little Easter
absolutely.
egg
We
of
talk about the
curtain
iron.
talk. Curtain talk. That could be a different podcast, couldn't it?
Yeah.